Hey everybody, welcome. It is Thursday, it is 7 p.m. and we are going to get started with our book club. Again, we are reading Self-Care for the Self-Aware. Previously, we talked about why empaths find each other. We talked about the developing coping mechanisms, how healing others can harm ourselves, how even though spiritual work is done while we're still feeling sick because of the energy that we've absorbed and we haven't been able to release or give back, okay? So tonight we're going to start with stage 2. Which is preventing empathic pain and illness. This is on page 25. And we're going to focus tonight on chapter 4 because this chapter is the key to understanding why caring for yourself is the most important thing that you can do. All right. In order for you to continue to keep helping people or healing people, you need to make sure that you're healed as well. Okay. So let's begin. It says, you shifted my focus from thinking I am responsible for any other living thing, to thinking about what I might like to do with my life. Focusing on my own intent for my life with a sense of adventure and a goal of joy liberated me. I held on to that image of the hole in my heart chakra, where everything that wasn't mine could just pass right on through. No questions asked. No judgments made. I could feel the wind whistle through the hole unobstructed on its way to meet the sun. I never felt so much a part of the entire natural forces and so separate from the human created ones. That's life, and all from one session. You told me I didn't need another one. I had gotten it, and I felt that way too. And that was a quote by Jane Pendant, who's the project manager in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Hey, Miss Davis, how are you? We are starting on chapter 4, which is page 26. The concept. I am not responsible for the soul path of another person. Neither are you. You may know this consciously, but odds are really high that as an empath, you are not yet mastered releasing other people's energies. You haven't fully embodied this awareness. The patterns of responsibility start early on. For some, it begins in our first few days in the womb. We know now that if a mother smokes, her baby smokes too. But what we don't often recognize is that if a mother is depressed, the baby also shares that chemical imbalance. In our first 9 months of life, we grow, expand, and become aware of what's happening within, to our mother, including sensing her fear, anger, and grief. And how true is that? Because I know I can tell when my son can feel what I'm feeling. But after birth, we are still very connected to source energy. Even though we haven't yet mastered our visual acuity, our inner awareness now expands to beyond the external environment of the womb. We believe that the people over there are a part of us: mother, father, siblings, aunts and uncles, doctors and nurses. At some level, we know we can and therefore begin to heal those closest to us in any way we can. We don a spiritual superhero cape and get to work. We learn that our joyful actions lighten the room and that our sadness darkens it. So we utter nonsensical sounds, giggle, smile, anything to heal or raise the vibration of those around us. The grooves of responsibility are formed very early on as we see that anything we do affects those closest to us. At the same time, our small selves are learning how to experience our own emotions. Unfortunately, our cries are sometimes met with even more fear, anger, and grief from those around us. We are often given a pacifier when we cry, which both teaches us that it's not okay to express grief and sets up patterns of oral satisfaction that later can become addictions used to temporarily quench fear and grief. Our anger, likewise, is thwarted in various and ultimately unhealthy ways. Wow, that's powerful. If you're just now joining us, we are on page 29. Jesus. We learn that things are very different when we are in the body from when we were in spirit form, and it saddens us. We also want to be our own person, so the ego begins to form in an attempt to separate us from the individual and collective pain of others. Because that process is not supported, we develop our own fear, anger, and grief. None of these expressions are supported either, causing the ego and sense of separateness to become more and more developed. But our sense of responsibility for making others happy and well persists. The spiritual superhero cape has become a second skin. So what he's basically saying is that as soon as we're born, we're basically taught that we have to put the needs of others before our own. We shouldn't express ourselves. We should focus our attentions on other people and realize that our own emotions will affect others. And so we should be more thoughtful or mindful of them and put them above ourselves. Okay. So self-blame extinguishes self-love. A few years later, if a caretaker or another relative living with you was unwell in any way, you sometimes took on responsibility for those conditions. For example, if your mother was depressed or your father was an alcoholic, the child like mine, now learning to deal with responsibility, thinks, if I were a better child, Dad wouldn't drink and Mom would be happier too. Many of us began doing what others wanted us to do in order to be loved and perceived as good. This can manifest in positive or negative emulation to align with our caregiver's actions. For example, a child may become compassionate like his mother or stubborn like his father, because the actions are in alignment with what the parent may say or do. The child is then called good. Being good may get us love and attention, but getting love because of what we do or don't do is the very definition of conditional love, or a very low vibration. This creates an unhealthy pattern that sets up all kinds of defeatist patterns for relationships later in life. As children, especially, we wished others around us to be happy and well. So we danced, acted extra silly, and eventually told jokes or used art or good grades or dancing or sports teams to get love from our caregivers, or make them and others proud of us, to alleviate their fear, anger, and grief. While taking care of others before ourselves, if you're just now joining us, we're on page 30. While taking care of others and ourselves may go a long way, the modus operandi many of us were taught since childhood, the healthier spirituality sees this as an unhealthy martyrdom. I find it unfortunate that complete selflessness is regarded as saintliness, and the helpers are so busy giving that they do not take the time to receive. Being poor or frail as an end result of this martyrdom is seen as a blessing. But I say that health and abundance are our birthrights. All right. Amen to that. It is better to give than receive. It is better to give than receive. Is an old paradigm that is by its nature unsustainable, yet so many of us fall into the trap. Wonderful healers and compassionate folks go hungry, while other people in larger organizations thrive. And it's because we fail to question the existent paradigm of selflessness. In fact, if we honor ourselves, we are considered selfish. And most of us were taught that selfish is the last thing to be or to be perceived as. And yet to do otherwise is unhealthy for the individuals whose intentions are loving and positive. I say to you that honoring your own needs is the highest form of love, not at the expense of others, but along with them. We can better serve others after we honor ourselves as children of God and start acting like we are worthy of that reality. To dishonor ourselves, to live from false humility, and to not recognize our worth, I believe is the ultimate insult to the Creator and will keep us in a perpetual state of discontent and wanting. Okay. So basically, what I take from this is that he's saying, you know, if you, in a nutshell, if you take care of yourself, then you're able to take care of other people. And if you treat yourself well, then essentially it's like you're treating God well because God is within you. Okay? None of this is meant to sound crass, but rather a wake-up call to living beyond the smaller... Can you sit down? Thank you. Thank you. None of this is meant to sound crass, but rather a wake-up call to living beyond the smaller vision we were taught and to begin seeing the bigger picture. It is better to love someone in their path unconditionally. It is better to be a guide, a confidant, a wingless angel, and whisper or scream words of encouragement and support rather than take on what's not yours. To take a part of another is thievery, but you both have been burglarized. Remember that another's grief is theirs, not yours. In fact, your benevolent intention has resulted in malevolent results. It's time to return to wholeness with its awareness. So that's cool. He's saying that, you know, if you take someone's emotions or someone's feelings, you've stolen that from them. But then also you've stolen from yourself. Possibly you've just stolen from yourself the ability to have peace. You understand? Okay. The subconscious desire to heal one or both parents or caregivers becomes pervasive throughout life and expresses itself in a variety of ways. The overweight parents raise the son or daughter who wants to become a nutritionist or personal trainer. The narcissist father raises the daughter who becomes a psychologist, social worker, or other form of counseling practitioner in order subconsciously to understand what makes him tick. The superficially inclined parent raises a child who wants to explore and go deeper and who often becomes an academic or intuitive, a seeker of truth. The grief-stricken mother gives birth to the child who's become an energy healer or a comedian. As adult children, we often try to heal a parent directly or indirectly, but it can't be done. Nor is it our job to do so. No matter how successful we may be in our healing modality or other vocation, subconsciously there is turmoil because no one can truly heal another. No matter how successful we may be in any career, there is turmoil because it's being done for the wrong reasons. This leads to fears of not doing or being enough. No matter how much good work we do in the world, the underlying impetus to become an effective healer or even successful business person can never be satisfied. That's quite interesting. I mean, how many of us, if you think about it, decided to go in a field based off, or to work in a field based off of the circumstances or the way that you were raised, right? I can say that I went into the mental health field because I wanted to know why people behave the way that they did. But looking back, was I trying to figure out why my mom was the way she was, why my dad was the way she was, why grandma and grandpa was the way they were, why my uncles were the way they were, you know? So I guess it can just become a cycle. So I'm curious to see, then, you know, what my child will grow up to be, and if it has anything to do with how I am as a parent or as an individual. People do anything to fill an emotional void that is within them. Weapons of mass distraction are plentiful and readily available. We drink, smoke, overeat, get lost on the internet, or heal others to cover our own pain, to fill that hole. But it doesn't work. Extreme examples of this behavior are addictions. While some addictions appear better or healthier than others, exercise is seen as better than drinking alcohol, or excessive exercise can be as damaging as alcohol. They're all rooted in the same need that can never be satisfied by actions that don't address our true need, which is for wholeness, connection, and self-acceptance. The exact things we believe we want from our caregivers but feel we can never get enough of. The sense of responsibility that most babies learn when combined with being an empath makes us absorb the problems that take on the imbalances in others. We typically try to heal ahead of maintaining a healthy practice of self-care. Some of us burn out after barely a decade in a field that, if chosen and performed with awareness and use of steps suggested in this book, could last a lifetime. If we get paid to be a healer of any type, or receive any other form of strong positive reinforcement, it's even harder to let go of the learned sense of responsibility from infancy. Our ego identification is with being a helper, and that combined with an unrealistic sense of responsibility creates a one-way exchange of negative energy that we take on and hold on to, sometimes forever. That section right there about how we burn out if we don't do any type of self-care is very eye-opening to me, because I was one time a clinical therapist. Prior to that, I was a case manager, and I burnt out. I just couldn't take it anymore. I felt overwhelmed, especially when I had certain clients come in who were were borderline personality disorders. So I ended up quitting and still staying in the mental health field, but I went into patients' rights activism, which doesn't cause as much burnout, which is interesting because I meet with more people and different people. Like every day it's a different person, but overall, like in a day, I'm meeting with more people than what I was when I was doing therapy. But I think it's because I don't have the opportunity to really build some type of professional relationship with the people that I'm advocating for. Then that has really helped decrease my own anxiety, depression, and not feeling like I was being overwhelmed. So this paragraph right here really touched me. When helping others doesn't really help them. No one really wants us to take on his or her problems, especially a parent. On a higher self level, it is actually contrary to a parent's karma to allow a child to take on the parent's voice. Let me read what this says. Miss Davis says, it is very eye-opening. Helps me realize how normal burnout is because of that lack of self-care. Absolutely. Absolutely. And like I told you earlier, how you got to put your self-care on your calendar, right? You got to make sure you set the alarm so then it becomes a habit. After 21 days of doing constant self-care, it will become a habit. And then within 90 days, it will become a lifestyle. So just keep that in mind and always practice, even if it's something little, even if it's just, soaking your feet in warm water when you get home from work, or if you're stressed out. And I don't know if you have any pets, just, petting your cat or dog or whatever the case may be would be helpful as well. Let me start again with this passage. When helping others doesn't really help out. No one really wants us to take on his or her problems, especially a parent. On a higher level, it is actually contrary to a parent's karma to allow a child to take on the parent's woes. For example, if you carry your father's or friends, partners, or clients' anger, we're not helping ourselves, obviously, but we are also not helping him. His anger and all the physical... my pages are stuck. All the physical end results that may have manifested in you. For examples, repressed anger may include tight muscles, elevated blood pressure, tumors, heart disease, etc., are his for a reason. We can identify that reason for him if he asks for such. But if he does or doesn't, we have to remember that it is his, not ours. If we take that anger from him, he no longer has that warning light that indicates that something within him needs to be addressed. Dad's underlying causative energy stays within him unnoticed until it comes out again. I feel like I said that word wrong. Causative or causative. Anyways, my apologies if I pronounced it wrong. Until it comes out again, likely as something slightly worse because of the accumulation and the lack of addressing it. Like sharing a drink with the alcoholic, we're enabling him. We are actually harming him in the long run as much as ourselves by taking on his issues. Empathy versus compassion. The same actions done with differing intentions will produce dramatically different end results. For example, giving someone money out of pity has a lower vibration than giving to him or her of unconditional love. The former can result in dependency for the recipient and an ego trip for the giver. The later can result in self-reliance for the recipient and an ever-opening heart for the giver. Let me pause right there and let me say something. And not that it's funny, haha, but it's funny, like, eye-opening. I usually do not give money to homeless people. I have my own thing about that. But one day I saw this man who was homeless and he had a dog. And I felt so bad. Like, I'm sure the dog eats because he looked healthy or healthy enough. But because the man had a dog, I felt like so bad for the dog and wanted to make sure that the dog was okay. So I gave the man some money, knowing that I couldn't tell him where to give the money, and I wasn't doing it for the fact of I'm doing this for the dog. I mean, I was doing it for the dog, but just in hopes, like, please use this money on your dog. But anyways, I digress and my apologies. The former can result in dependency for the recipient and an ego trip for the giver. The latter can result in self-reliance for the recipient and an ever-opening heart for the giver. Likewise, it's great to be a healer. It's great to have compassion, but even compassion is overshadowed by empathy. It becomes far less healthy or even helpful. Being a healer with or without a title or degree from a place of empathy is destructive to both parties. Empathy is an emotion of responsibility and enmeshment of very low vibration, and comes from a misapplication of the concepts of oneness and responsibility. However, being a healer from a place of compassion and the more complete understanding of oneness is a higher vibration. Compassion is a sharing of unconditional love. It is channeling universal energy for the good of all through a physical form called a healer. A master that we can all relate to is His Holiness the Dalai Lama. If he were to feel responsible for all those who thinks he is responsible for them, he would be dead by now. But instead of empathy, he's mastered compassion, and anyone in his presence can feel that. Anyone in his presence can feel his lack of judgment and his correct application of the concepts of oneness and responsibility. So from that, I take that what he is saying, that empathy, we are empathetic, or we act with empathy due to possible guilt or pity, and we act with compassion due to love and wanting grace for everyone. That's what I take from that. If you take something else from this section called empathy versus compassion, let me know. Responsibility or love. How do you know if you are coming from responsibility or from love? If you think you're indebted to help someone, feel uninspired or drained during or after being of help, it's likely coming from responsibility. This also includes acting from guilt, shame, or fear. They all lead to resentment and a constriction of your energy and thus a reduction of your immune system's capabilities. If you feel more joyous, open-hearted, and energized during the action, it's coming from love. Actions, when channeled through the body from infinite universal love, cannot tire you. Actions coming from a sense of limitation, responsibility, guilt, shame, or fear certainly will block energy flow, leading to stagnation, discomfort, and eventually pain and or illness. None of this means to ignore or to stay clear of those in emotional or physical pain. It only means we need to understand that their pain isn't our pain and that it is not our job to fix it for them. In fact, us carrying their burden prevents them from truly healing. It is best to be a supporter, a guide, an assistant to a process, but not a sponge or an enabler. This is a very big difference. This is great. This actually makes so much sense with me deciding to start doing work as a life coach, because I'm essentially guiding people. I don't have to take on anything. I just, for the most part, ask my clients questions to get them to a point where they have their own aha moment. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to do to take dominion over my life. This is what I need to do to meet my goals. This is what I need to do to have the life that I am choosing for myself, because I feel that I deserve that life. Moving forward. Not taking on responsibility, of course, is situational. This is not an excuse to let our children harm themselves or others out of ignorance. We are responsible to some degree for our children, including clothing and feeding them, giving them love, and making sure they're safe. But they have much to learn on their own. How many of us have told a teenager not to do a certain thing only to watch him do that very thing we've been warning him about and had it end horribly? It is difficult to watch and experience, of course, and yet that teenager has learned a powerful lesson through first-hand experience, which is a better teaching than even the most loving parents can provide through words alone. Absolutely. I mean, of course, he's not saying don't take care of your kids. That would be, illogical. But yeah, definitely learning from experience is one of the best teachers. So we just kind of have to move forward and provide support as the person is going through whatever issues that they're or situation that they're moving through at the time. Honoring others' paths. We're talking about a much bigger perspective about living from a soul level awareness that truly understands spiritual paths and honors all people wherever they are. It might be a part of your path to help others, but again, not from a place of responsibility that is actually power tripping and feeling our egos. Filling our egos with a belief, sorry, I lost my spot, that we are doing the healing. We are not. While people feel that I am a high quality healer, I rather believe myself to be a high quality channel. One who can open himself up and let universal energy pass through me via my intention, like liquid through a funnel to a desired end. The less attached and more loving my intention, the better the results. The compassionate person loves others as they are, where they are, and who they are. We can better achieve this state by trusting the bigger picture. We have to know deep within ourselves that all people are exactly where they need to be. We should not judge another's path. According to many mystic traditions, their soul has chosen the perfect vehicle for them to fulfill their mission. No matter what's happening on the outside, on the inside, the soul is having the time of its life. It's better to offer guidance or love or a safe listening space or a book recommendation or a few dollars or a hug, because it's what we're called to do from a higher place, not out of low vibration actions. And then, we then should drop all attachments to outcomes, even if we're being paid to be in service. What do I take away from this? To just not question why other people are doing what they're doing, possibly. I mean, if we go by the standards of what's written here, the person's spirit is going on their own path. They're doing their thing to get them where they need to be. And with their, their mission is totally different from ours. And so they have to take different steps, to get them where they need to go. So we shouldn't pass judgment on what they decide to do. They may not think the same as we do. So we should just, again, be supportive and provide guidance. And allow them to basically take the reins of their own life. Interesting. All right, next, the action step. We need to integrate a mental awareness of compassion over responsibility deep into the cells so that it becomes a habit and not just a thought. New ideas become habits. Through conscious repetition of thoughts, words, and actions, regularly repeat to yourself that compassion means to accept everyone exactly where they are, with no need for others to be, say, or do anything in particular. Do you remember the first time you drove a car? There were a lot of steps to be aware of, to remember, and to implement, and at first it seemed overwhelming. But after a few months, those steps became habit. And now, years later, you can arrive somewhere not remembering the drive you took to get there. Discerning between compassion and empathy and learning who and what you're responsible for isn't much different. The process can take moments, days, or months of conscious awareness and repetition. There is no right or wrong or even typical amount of time. It will take what it needs to. The important thing to remember is that no one is responsible for another person's soul. There are other practices that can help spur the integration of the concept that no one is responsible for another. Experiential therapies that get to the emotions in the body can help. Also, you can write about it, meditate upon it, sing it, dance it. The awareness will integrate with conscious intention, patience, and action. In every way possible, affirm that I am only responsible for myself. Let me repeat that. I am only responsible for myself. You are only responsible for yourself. Okay? The specific action step in living mindfully, knowing what type of help to give or not give, and knowing why or why not. A compassionate no may be in order. I'm sorry, I don't feel comfortable with that. Or even a not right now, maybe later can work wonders, but typically we can best be heard when we speak that from a place of untriggered emotions. By living mindfully, we can recognize an unresolved emotion trigger. Let ourselves feel it to heal it. More on that later. And then have easy access to the higher truth. Example, what you just said really triggered me. So I'm going to leave the room for a moment and I'll come back to discuss it when I'm clear. So basically, this is setting boundaries. Setting boundaries to protect yourself. This may sound difficult, but with practice, it becomes easier. From that cleared space, it is very easy to know exactly what to say, be, and do in any situation. When open and clear, the perfect words and actions always follow because access to the heart is easier. The ego-based pain has been dissolved. Okay, resistance is futile. Sometimes subconsciously, we are unwilling to stop carrying the burdens of a loved one, even if he or she is deceased. The sense of responsibility is only deepened by the subconscious belief that another person or soul, if they're deceased, needs us to help them. We may feel that mom or dad is too weak and that if we return their fear, anger, or grief to them, they'll crash and the guilt will be gut-wrenching. Not true. They need what is theirs. In fact, quite often their pain becomes a catalyst to their growth. That's very interesting. I totally agree with this, because sometimes when my son is upset about something that he's done, that he's gotten in trouble for, he will project that anger onto me, and I quite frequently have to remind him to be accountable for his own actions, and to make him aware that he has to think beyond what is currently in front of him, and think how what he is doing is going to affect him in the future, whether if it's negative or positive. I always try to teach him how to think beyond and be mindful of what could proceed once his action has been completed. So yeah, I just wanted to share that. Another form of resistance is when we're attached to being the sponge. If there is an identification of being a healer, resistance is typical but not irreversible. It will require a dismantling of your attachments to being in service for a loved one, small group, or community in the way that you have been accustomed. Even if you don't consciously know who you are feeling responsible for, that information will ultimately make itself known to you if it is necessary for your healing and growth. Focus on soul responsibility whenever possible. So focus on soul responsibility whenever possible, singular. Focus on soul responsibility whenever possible. So your spirit, your mind, okay? Write about it, talk about it, sing about it, dance it into your cells repeatedly, hourly or daily if necessary, and certainly before engaging with others. There is no one right way for everyone. This kind of goes back to our class on Sunday, where we're talking about how to release the energy of other people, where it was, showering, shaking it off, bathing, singing, doing something to just release the energy. There is no one right way for everyone. Meditate upon the integration of this wisdom, and eventually it will become a habit. Both of these are a difficult belief to access. Many of us hold these forms of resistance on deep inner levels, not easily reached by the typically functioning conscious mind. So we must be diligent in discovering what's true at our core. The deeper degree that you achieve this knowing, the easier it will be to heal what ails you and prevent reoccurrence. Let me read that again. The deeper degree that you achieve this knowing, the easier it will be to heal what ails you and prevent reoccurrence. Your success with the concepts and tools in the rest of this book will depend upon your ability to know and integrate this message. Metaphysically speaking, your primary responsibility is yourself. That's something we should probably all write down on a note card and keep it, on our computers or somewhere on our desk, somewhere where we'll see it every day, or mirror. Write it down, tape it up to the mirror in your bathroom, or whatever space you are in every day, and you will see it. That's what we should all write. Again, metaphysically speaking, your primary responsibility is to yourself. Okay? So that's all I'm going to read tonight. If you guys have any questions or comments, or kind of want to respond to anything that I've said tonight, go ahead and put it in the comment section, and I'll respond at a later time. Next Thursday, we will continue with stage 2, but I will read chapters 5 and chapter 6? Nope. It's just chapter 5, and then we'll go into stage 3, which is healing empathic pain and illness. Okay? So thank you guys for joining me. I really appreciate it, and I will see you later.